Turf Business TV are chatting to Ian Smith today, who's the Amenity and Sports Turf Consultant at St Albans School. Ian, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So I just wanted to touch on the woolen playing fields, which is, I think, your little complex for the facilities you have. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not such a little complex, really.
Yeah, I know, large actually. So speaking of, tell us how many surfaces you actually have got there.
Yeah, well, when we built it in year 2000 as a new project. It was the biggest build in Europe ever as an out-and-out sports ground. It's 23 hectares and it contains 23 winter pitches, so rugby and football, 8 cricket squares, an artificial hockey pitch, and 13 tennis courts.
So a lot to look after there.
Yeah.
How big is your team that's working with you?
It's a team of 6, myself and 5. There's Steve, who's the head groundsman, and then we've got a mechanic and three other groundsmen as well. But the mechanic also works out on the field as well.
Okay. So how is it for you and the team managing, a variety of different surfaces being at the school?
It's great. It's hectic. It's busy. There's never a day when we're not rushed off our feet. But to be honest, I actually prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they would say that we're short-staffed. If you actually normally work it out, we should have a staff at least 8 or 9. But we have to get by with the 6 now. We used to have summer casuals. Unfortunately, we don't anymore. So
yeah.
It is.
So how is that? Do you feel that yourself and the team really, does the variety help, or do you feel like you're spread quite thin, or?
We've got the balance about right, really.
Okay.
I do like the fact that we go from season to season as well, not just the one sport. I started off working in professional football. I also worked in professional cricket, and it's nice actually. Now we've got this different sports, so we're not just focused on one thing. So it's always a variety, and certainly in school, after about 14 weeks, we change and everything changes from one sport to another. So it's hectic in the changeover, but it's really interesting actually, rather than just stagnating doing the one thing all the time.
So having that variety, obviously, I assume is very exciting and actually quite nice for you to go into work and you're not looking after one surface every day. It must be good. So is there a particular area of that you feel you're most challenged?
Cricket's always the most, where you have to have your skill, the highest skill set. Cricket I've always really liked. So that's my baby in the summer, and I'm just taken up with looking after. It's the equivalent of 91 cricket strips on the site, and it's myself and Chris Rizza, the 2 of us just look after all the cricket surfaces while the other boys are doing the other sports.
So you touched on a bit there, I think, in earlier of your turf care career, what you've sort of looked after. So go into that a bit more for us and tell us a bit more about your background.
Well, I think like a lot of people in our industry, I wasn't particularly good at school. Spend all my time looking out the window at people playing sport, and the only time I excelled at my school and the only time that people ever really recognised me was when I was playing sport. Ideally, I would have liked to be a professional sportsman, but that didn't quite happen. But I had the opportunity. Watford Football Club in the late 70s, they used to take school kids on during school holidays to do manual work. It was painting crash barriers and doing all sorts of things. There used to be an old dog track around the football pitch, believe it or not, in those days, and we used to look after the dog racing track as well. And then it came to summer holidays, and I'd work all summer doing that type of thing as well with them. And when all the other kids went back to school when they were 16, 17, I actually just came back to work at Watford Football Club on the next morning, not telling them. And they said, "Oh, you're going back to school again?" I said, "No, I've had enough of that." So they said, "Well, you might as well come and join us then." So that was really the first time I started properly, professionally. I worked there for 2 years actually at the stadium full time. And then the head groundsman, Les Simmons, who was an absolute legend, old school, but really a good old boy. He knew and could see that I had the bug and was good and wanted to learn more. Watford Football Club at the time weren't willing to send me to college to learn more, so he persuaded me to actually leave. So I went to the training ground, which is London Poly, where I was there for 7 years, but at the same time they sent me to college and I did my qualifications horticulture,
Mm-hmm.
and then greenkeeping and sports turf management.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about Watford, Ian, because I think you mentioned that you was more than just a groundsman there. I think you were responsible for rather a lot. So tell us a bit more about that.
Well, we used to do everything. There was only a small crew. There was four people at the whole of the maintenance. That was the pitch, the stands, the everything. So the very first task I had, because I wasn't that big at the time, was there was an old wooden stand with gaps in the floorboard where people have been putting all their rubbish through for about 50, 60 years. And there was a 6-foot void that had come completely full of rubbish all the way up to the top. So my first task at Watford was they took a couple of the floorboards of this stand, and then 2 people lowered me down at arm's length into this 6-foot pile of rubbish. The full length of the stand, this was, under the whole of the stand. And I used to cleaned it all out by hand with dustbins or whatever. And it took about 6 weeks to clear all this rubbish out from under a stand. And every day I used to look like a panda at the end of the day, black eyes and black mouth, black teeth, everything just with the dirt and the dust.
Yeah.
Do everything. I learned to be a plumber. They didn't send me to college to do the technical stuff with horticulture, but I learned how to be a plumber. I learned how to be an electrician. I'm a sign writer, so I can sign write all the seat numbers and the coffee shops and all that type of thing. So we did all sorts. Health and safety wasn't an issue. They didn't think about that type of thing because I was so light. There was asbestos roofs on the stands, and they used to send me walking across the top to try and fix any holes in it because I was the lightest one, least likely to fall through.
Oh goodness me!
Floodlight towers. If any of the floodlight bulbs went, just as a 16-year-old kid, I was given a light bulb and told to go up a 120-foot floodlight tower and go and change the light bulbs. Just used to do everything.
Yeah.
But it was fun. We did have good fun. I mean, it was very much amateur, even though it was professional football. It's what it is nowadays. Yeah.
Not so glamorous, but I'm sure you learnt some very valuable things there for, to take you down your career.
Because Elton John was involved heavily at the time, so we used to go to his parties. He had a football pitch in his back garden that I used to look after. So whenever he had these big parties or whatever with all the showbiz type, I used to go and get the pitch ready for that. And we did actually stay on a few, which was good fun.
They sound very fun. So where was it after that?
And then from there, I went and I did. I was aware that St Albans School were wanting to build a brand new complex. They played on a little site in the town. Mm-hmm. It wasn't big enough for the number of pupils that the school had. Mm-hmm. They wanted to build a new place. And recently, with my qualifications that I had, and I was probably a little bit cocky at the time as well, when I heard that they wanted to build a new complex, I actually just turned up at the school, knocked on the door and said, I gather you want to build a new complex. Yeah. Well, I'm the man to build it for you, so don't bother advertising. Come, take me on. As it was, deputy head groundsman at the time, there was a vacancy, and they said, well, we'll take you on for a year. The head groundsman then was going to retire in the next 2 years, and they said, if you prove yourself in that time, we'll take you on. And that's what I did. And the rest is history. Unfortunately, it took 9 years to get planning permission for our complex with the council. We had 3 full public inquiries. So part of the journey was actually sitting in the courts and helping out with the evidence or whatever for the barristers about what things we were doing currently at the school and what we were planning to do. Mm-hmm. And it was that was very interesting. And then I oversaw the whole build. The build. Well, I was involved in the design, the design of the buildings, the design of the pavilions, of the garages, everything. I was involved all the way through. So really, the Woollands is my baby, really. Yeah, I think that's great as well to have behind you that you was there throughout that whole process. How was that, being there from day one, really, and seeing it all come to fruition? Oh, I mean, it was brilliant. And I suppose the highlight was a few years later, then when we got the award on the IOG for the sports ground for college, schools and colleges, and we were the ground of the year. So, I mean, it's really cool, really. So for the whole team, for all the effort that they put in to get there. Yeah. Amazing. So fast forward to, recently and what's going on at St Albans at the minute. I think you mentioned that you've been doing some training videos for ECB. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Yeah. Chris Woods from the ECB a few years ago was after a new office, and we had actually some spare office space available in our pavilion. So we invited him in. He was good for us. We helped him, he helped us. Obviously, to have somebody like him on hand for any advice with regard to what we were doing on the cricket was brilliant. I'd met Chris Woods years ago. For my sins, I actually do my summer holidays. I actually work for a fortnight of my summer holidays at the Oval as well.
Okay.
And that's where I met Chris. So we were good pals anyway.
Yeah.
But when he came, our place was perfect for all these training videos that the ECB were making. So they did a load of NatWest Pitch Doctor videos, which were very, very successful. Chris retired 18 months, 2 years ago. Andy Mack's taken over, but he approached me and said, would we be happy to use our venue to do another set of videos? So we're health and safety ones, but this one's with the GMA as well. So not just these.
So how are they? How are they today?
They were interesting. Two days filming, and everything trying to be correct because it was health and safety videos. And I like to think I do everything correctly, but when you've got a load of people over your shoulder, that are safety people, making sure that you do everything, the pressure is on you a bit. But they say that they've turned out okay, but they're editing them at the moment, and we'll find out in the new year.
Soon to come. But that's quite a compliment, I feel, for them wanting to obviously do it at the school. Quite a compliment to you and the team.
We like our training. There's other things over the last few years, we've had Dennis Sisis events at our place, where we have up to nearly 300 people come over a day, and we do training indoors in the morning. We'll have some papers, some spoken papers, and then if the weather's any good in the afternoon, we go outside and do practical stuff and show people how we do things. Which me, the way I'm wired, I like to learn practically. That's I wasn't any good at. I'd say I wasn't very good at school, and I think that's probably an issue I have with modern day training. Some of the modern day training courses they have now, they try to teach everybody to do things online, and I think some things you can't teach online. I think some things you actually try them, get your hands on, feel them, and get a feel for it. And as I say, it wouldn't be very good for me. So I like to think they should do more, try to do more practical stuff. That's maybe something that the little group in education, Turf Business Summit, we're talking about maybe if we can get together and arrange training amongst ourselves for our staff, where there's things that they can do practically, where we can actually get people out and do things. But we'll see. It's working, in the pipeline, shall we say.
Yeah, I think that's a great little initiative. It sounds great. And also, I wanted to just touch on with you pressure. So I'm sure obviously your grounds and your facilities are always kept to the utmost perfect standards. But with the grounds being such a huge selling point for the school, is there a bit more pressure, from the powers that be, or whether just within the team for it to look extra amazing around that recruitment period? Or
I think you make your reputation for yourself, and then you almost make pressure for yourself because you have high standards. You always want to be at least there, and ideally you want to improve all the time. But it is sometimes difficult, and with modern day restrictions on budgets, and as I say, we haven't quite got the staff that we would like. So you have to make slight compromises, but you always want the place to be bang on. Even when some the opposition schools, if they come and they're wowed by all these parents talk amongst themselves, and it could be the fact that playing our school with an older son, when suddenly their younger sons come and think, oh no, I want him to go there because they've got those facilities, and it's very much a selling point for us. So it does have to be just right. Safety, most important, all the time safety, because we also, our ground, apart from just the school, we also sub out to, it's the old boys club who are involved with us as well. We look after the whole site for them as well. And Saracens Rugby Club, we're the training centre for Saracens Rugby Club. So we've got eight England internationals or whatever playing at our place all the time. So we can't have those players turning their ankles and getting hurt on dangerous pitches.
No. So, well, I suppose, is that even an added pressure because having that going on as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on budget as well, because you just mentioned it in there previously. With the facilities being such a big driver, does that sort of help you justify things, or with your budget with the powers that be above? Or
school are always really good, as long as you can justify. They don't just throw money about, but if you can actually state a business case really for why we need a piece of kit, what we're going to achieve by it, and then they can work it out over a period of time. We've changed the way we purchase. We used to purchase out and out all our machines. We've changed in the last few years. It's bursts. Each burst changes and has a different way of working things. But we had a burst that changed things a few years ago where we went to buy things on a lease, 5-year lease, rolling lease, which is actually better for us. It works out well for the school. It may cost a fraction more, but as the bursar says, if he knows every year that these machines are going to cost us so much, he can budget and set the school fees appropriately, rather than if we have an expensive machine that suddenly conks out and you need to buy a new piece of kit that's going to cost you 50,000-60,000 pounds maybe for a big tractor or something like that. Do you have
a specific fleet that you use, or do you have various?
Now with this lease thing, we're having to stick more with a company where we buy a package. That's the only downside for me. When we first set up this new site, we were lucky the school just said try everything, so we got all the companies out. So for the fairway mowers or whatever, all the companies sent their machines out, and we insisted that they left them with us for up to a week so we could try them properly. And all the boys in the team, so it was all a decision by all the boys, so we all tried the machines, saw which ones we liked most, and then we just voted on it. It went to the bursar, and the bursar bought that piece of kit. So we actually had 4 tractors, and all different sizes, and all 4 were a different make.
Okay.
So it's not so good. Well, it wouldn't work for doing this lease deals so much if you're buying odds and sods rather than buying a whole package. So one way it's good because you've got the service backup if you've got a fleet from one company, but some of their machines might be the best at one task. One of the other tasks, their machine's not quite so good. So swings and roundabouts really. We do well. We mustn't complain.
You sort of chipped up there about the summit and what your educational group was discussing in terms of the training initiative that hopefully is in the pipeline. But I think you were also sort of focusing on recognition, and I wanted to ask how you felt in terms of the education sector. Do you feel that you get enough praise, attention, recognition in terms of other sectors of turf care that perhaps are a bit more glamorous or televised?
No, you tend to get to these trade shows and it tends to be the pictures are all of the professional football or golf or whatever. And yet our guys are producing certainly as good service. And then when you look at a lot of the sports, you look at the England rugby team, the England cricket team, nearly all the players, to be honest, of those squads have been brought up in the independent school sector where the services have been to learn their skills. I think we should sing, we should sing that we really do produce all these players, but we don't advertise that enough.
No. And if anything, I feel it might, well, I don't mean to put down any other groundsman or turf care professional, but obviously you're looking after an array of surfaces rather than just one. So to be honest, your skills are possibly more varied.
Yes. Oh no, it's definitely better. I think you'll find that there's an awful lot of our boys in the independent school sector now that have been in professional sport as a single sport first, and they've dropped into the independent school sector.
Is there any other issues you'd like to ship up, industry issues that you feel quite passionately about, obviously aside from that?
I mean, the one is the education, which I keep saying. Well, we need to educate new people into the profession. Don't necessarily, as I said earlier, think that the online way is the best way for everybody. And we haven't got a new blood coming in. We're really struggling. when we first started here, 20 years ago, 21 years ago, we had big numbers applying whenever there was a post vacant. Fortunately, our turnover of staff is extremely low. We hardly, most people have been here for a long time. We'd like to think that's because we treat people well, but the turnover, we've had people that have started at the lower ranks and have gone on and are grounds managers of their own independent schools, which I'm very proud of. It's like a other head really looking after whatever. I'm really proud that actually we've achieved that for some kids that came in without any skills.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the new kid. We just haven't got the new kids applying. I don't know if it's the industry is not sexy. It can be nasty. It can be horrible in the winter.
Yeah.
It's cold, it's wet, and sometimes you've just got to get out there and do the job. Now, a lot of people don't want to do that.
No.
And it's the swings and roundabouts. In the summer, you're in your shorts and everything's lovely, and people say, "Oh, I'm so jealous of your job," but you have to go through it all. You have to do the one to get the other. I just don't know. It's I don't want to be derogatory about some of the kids that we've had. We've had a couple of apprentices. We've had some real good ones, but we've had some that just haven't wanted to actually
do the job,
work. And it's not just about arriving and climbing on the shiniest machine and sitting in a nice warm cab all day. Sometimes you've got to actually go out there and get cold and wet.
I think you definitely have to be a certain type of person, and you definitely have to love this job and love what you do in order to sort of carry on through that.
I mean, the wages I know aren't very good compared with some of the other jobs, and it's difficult because certainly when you look at a lot of sports grounds, they haven't got two pennies to rub together. So where people say, oh, we need to raise the extra money or whatever, I don't know where they're going to get it from. That's the issue. It would be lovely if you could just magic money up. But when the cutbacks are being made everywhere, it's very, very difficult to know exactly where you can do that.
Whilst we're on the subject of sort of industry issues, I wanted to touch on tied houses, obviously with certain jobs. So I know you mentioned that you don't live on site now, but you have in the past. I was wondering how you felt about that, whether there's enough sort of information for people that are living on site to sort of plan ahead for the future and think about mortgages and such, because obviously when they leave their job, they leave their house. So
when I started, when I became head groundsman at the old site back in 90 it was, part of the job was I had to be on the gatehouse. There was a gatehouse, and part of security was I had to live on site. It was fine. It meant you never got away from work, which can be a bit of an issue, especially when you've got a young family and you're forever having to go out and do stuff. And Johnny's left his homework in the pavilion, and you've got to go up and unlock the pavilion and get his stuff out and things like that. But I don't know. You people need to try. You get the benefit of having a house, which is great. But don't think it's just that, and if you've got it's for free, because it will end in time. You might even fall out with the school might fall out with you and you want to move on, or when you just come to retiring. The old boy that had the place before me, he had to be evicted, officially evicted by a court order before the council would house him.
Really?
Now, I certainly didn't want to be in that situation, so what I did is, from the money I would have had in a mortgage, I actually bought a house and I had a buy to let. So I let the property out. So all the time that I was in the tied house, I still had some property. So if anything did happen, if anything happened to myself, my family would have been left with something. And then if I fell out of love with that job, I could have just walked away at any time, because otherwise your employers have got you. You can't just withdraw if you're living in a school place. So I think it's important that if you do have the benefit of having your own place with work, try to keep the property market just in case, because I've heard some horrible stories, unfortunately, with people that have happened where the sports grounds have just suddenly shut down or something like that. So not good at all.
So let's talk about ambitions, shall we, Ian? So I think you seem really happy where you are, but what's next for you? Do you see anywhere else, or are you, live and die where you are now?
It's difficult. I'm born and bred in St Albans, so I was born it. My grandfather went to this school in 1926. My uncle went to the school in the 50s. My son went through the school as a pupil. My wife works in the art department and has done for the last 13 years.
Wow, it's a family affair then.
Very much a family affair. It's difficult. There's times when I thought I'd like to leave. I don't, but I do like the school environment. The school treated me fantastic. Before I came here, when I was leaving the Watford training ground, I was offered the job to look after the Saudi National Football Stadium.
Wow.
There was problems with the contract when it was all drawn up. I was actually officially offered the job, but when the contract was actually drawn up and translated, there was some things that they'd changed. So I wasn't very happy to actually leave this country and go somewhere where they'd agreed something and then they weren't going to fulfill it. So then I went to the school. Watford Football Club tried to get me back to be their groundsman at Vicarage Road, but I was enjoying the school so much and the project of really drawing up everything for this complex. And as I say, this complex is kind of my baby, really, right from plans to fruition. So will I leave? Don't tell the school, but no, I will probably. I'm probably a lifer. I'm enjoying myself too much still. I still enjoy going to work, which is a joy, because there's an awful lot of people I know that don't like going to work. So it's every day is a holiday, really, if you actually enjoy going to work, isn't it?
It's lovely to hear you're so happy where you are. But I think that's all. So thank you very much for setting some time aside for us, Ian.
Pleasure.
It's been fascinating talking to you. Hopefully catch up with you soon at some industry event or something or other. But thank you very much, Ian.